We want to bring in Anna Campoy. She's a Latin American reporter for Quartz. And Anna, you're joining us from Dallas. So you wrote a really interesting article, and you say, in fact, despite what President Trump says about the laws needing to be changed, the Trump administration is actually not following the law when they prosecute everyone who crosses the border illegally. And actually what they're doing is violating an ICE policy. Can you explain?
So the Trump administration says it's forced to do what it's doing, but in fact it has discretion to choose to decide who it prosecutes and who it releases on parole. And this ICE directive says exactly that. The directive applies to asylum seekers. Many of the people who are being separated from their children are asylum seekers. And it says that if someone is not, does not pose a flight risk or a danger to society, they should be released on parole. If they were following that directive, then many of these people wouldn't be held and separated from their children.
You make an interesting point, Anna, and it's something that people who support President Trump have pushed back on in the recent days. They say that President Barack Obama deported many people, many families. In fact, you'll recall that they used to call him deporter-in-chief. But there was a distinction between what the Obama administration did in that, as you point out, there were people that they thought were perhaps dangerous or a menace to society, drug dealers, people who had violent histories. Those people got deported back. And that's a very different situation here. And the Obama administration did not break up and separate children from their mothers.
That's right. So Obama had a policy of prosecutorial discretion, and it had a list of priorities of immigrants it would prosecute first. On the border, Obama was also faced with an influx of immigrants coming in as families from Central America. And what they did was put children and detain children and parents, which is what some of these bills in Congress are proposing to do. That also came under a lot of scrutiny at the time. But of course, you know, these days we're talking about something way more radical, which is separating the families from the kids.
The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, wrote an op-ed in USA Today. He said, among other things, aside from defending the policy, he said, among other things, look, there's $1 billion in taxpayer money that's going to make sure that these children are okay, that in fact they're being cared for in many ways better than some American children, and prosecuting the adults who come across the border with children is absolutely necessary, because the way the policy was being interpreted before, it amounted to a type of amnesty. What would your response be to him?
Well, I mean, I guess it's a repetition of the argument that the White House has been making, that they are forced to do this. And what he's saying essentially is, we are not going to use the discretion we have. We have decided that we're going to prosecute everyone, and you know, it's going to cost money, and we're willing to pay that. And then you know, he's trying to give assurances to the public that the kids are well taken care of, but separately, we see reporting of the Department of Homeland Security losing track of kids, and other troubling reports of how some of these kids are being treated. So, I mean, I don't think that his op-ed does much to, you know, bolster his case, aside from his, you know, the Trump administration's most loyal supporters.
Anna, critics, as you know, say President Trump can end this zero-tolerance policy on his own with just a phone call. But the House, as you pointed out, is trying to pass legislation. There's one proposal out there that would keep families together, but would allow them to be detained for much longer. Would that reduce some of the outrage, or is that just a temporary fix to a much larger problem, which many people say has existed for many years, going back to the Clinton administration?
This would be another temporary fix, and I would suspect it would get backlash, as it did back in 2014 when the Obama administration started doing that. In fact, the reason why the Trump administration can't do that without a bill is that there was a court settlement. There's a court settlement, and that was applied to families and children, and it says that they can't be held for long periods of time. So I don't, this might help calm the debate a little bit, but I don't see it going away. And the other issue is that people are coming because, in large part, because the situation in Central America is terrible, and so that would have to be addressed at some point.
Ana Campoy from Quartz, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it.
Thank you.